Good morning, good morning. We're up and we're running. Oh yeah. We are up and we are running. Let me stop that video. There you go. Right. This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. That you've got to believe, huh? That you've got to believe. Let me test the sound all round. Make sure there's no further hiccup. Oh yes, it is good. It is good. This is the motivator. Later joined by Empress Abner. Don't you worry, she has a son and she's doing things with her son. That's the way it should be. That's what I like. That's what I like. So welcome to you all and thank you for your listening ears. If you are listening to us via galaxyafiwi.net, we thank you. If you're viewing us, of course, via YouTube and Facebook, of course, you can find us on YouTube and Facebook using the following words. It's The Motivator Show. That DE space Motivator Show. Okay? That's where you can find us. You can see and you can hear my personage. Yes, it's real. It's me. It's not an artificial intelligence. It's the motivator speaking to you, direct and live. Yeah? Direct and live. But I'm feeling good this morning. In fact, I'm feeling outstanding, alive, strong, determined. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And we're going to have a fantastic show, an edutainment experience. All right. So let's get to it, shall we? So, those of you who are able to view us via YouTube and Facebook, please send a quick message and say, someone already acknowledged. You can hear me loud and clear. Just keep sending those messages through that you can hear us loud and clear. And of course, if for whatever reason you can't listen to us via galaxyafiwi.net, we're also transmitting live via Mixcloud. Again, under the Motivator banner. DE space Motivator space banner. Okay? So that's the many platforms this show's going out, both to UK, Europe, worldwide. And I'm grateful for your custom. And I hope not only to entertain, I hope to inform, to encourage, to raise your consciousness so you will not simply listen passively, that you will act, you will do, you will make things happen. Yep, it will happen because you are determined. It shall happen. Praise be, praise be. So let me now move on because, as you know, I'm always keen to do the lifestyle messages. Why? As many of you will be aware, I have other public hats. I'm an elected official, a councillor, if you like. I see the stats, and the stats as they relate to our community, and I mean essentially people of African heritage, yeah? Whether you come here directly from the continent or from the Caribbean, from the Americas or elsewhere. Those of you of African heritage, and indeed those of you of South Asian heritage, these lifestyle messages apply to you also. Why? I've seen the stats, the health-related stats, and they make for uncomfortable reading. And as you read and study, you realize it is incumbent on someone in my position with a platform to communicate these lifestyle messages. But whatever I say, please, I urge you to seek professional advice. Speak to your doctor, speak to your GP, speak to your nutritional pharmacist, or whoever has access to your medical records. So the lifestyle messages are adapted for you. Okay? But generally, I'm assured these lifestyle messages would apply to wherever you are in the world. I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you ingest every day, you consume, you eat every day. Why? Because sugar and salt are the primary causes of some important and significant and profound conditions that pervade our community. And specifically, diabetes and hypertension or high blood pressure. Most of you, either in your immediate family or your family networks, will be aware of someone with either diabetes or hypertension. And I'm drawn to a speech given a little while ago by the Vice Chancellor of the Universities of the West Indies, in which he said members of his own families had both of these conditions, specifically diabetes. Professor Hilary Beckles. Okay, you can look him up and you can find his speech on, I believe, the various social media platforms where he gives this testimony. And we all recognize this to be a condition that once you've got it for life. You can manage it, but there is no known cure. So I say to you, prevention is better than cure. So I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt you add to your food, you add to your meals, yeah? You add to the general cuisine. Diabetes and hypertension, high blood pressure, are conditions which are very serious and can be most certainly very debilitating. So I ask you to reduce significantly your sugar and salt intake, particularly if you live in an environment in which food or calories are readily accessible. By that I mean that you're able to have 3-course meals 3 times a day and your bellies are able to be full. Yeah? If you have and live in those conditions, I ask you to think carefully about the amount of sugar and salt you're consuming, either consciously or unconsciously. Okay? Consciously or unconsciously. I no longer purchase sugar from the grocery store. I no longer purchase salt from the grocery store. I no longer need or feel the need to add sugar and salt to my foods every time. Okay? And you're a mother or father and you're cooking for your children or for yourself, please practice gradual reduction. It took me, I'd be really frank with you, 10 years before I was able to stop completely purchasing sugar and salt from the grocery store. Can you imagine? 10 years, because I had a lifetime of habit of adding sugar and salt to my foods. Yeah, whether part of my cooking or you add it to your to general tasting. So I simply ask you to consider, and if in doubt, go to your doctor, go to your GP, your nutritional pharmacist, and let them do the check on you. Yeah, just do an assessment as to the amount of sugar and salt in your bloodstream. And if it persists for 1 year, you might survive, fine. If it persists for 10 years, you might survive, fine. If it persists for 20, 30, 40 years, then you are opening yourself up to contracting one of these typical lifestyle diseases. And it is very much that, a disease. So I urge you, so that you can enjoy your later life without impediment with illnesses and so on, you've got to take care of yourself. Reduce significantly your sugar and salt intake. And I know it's profound. I know it is profound. But honestly, this is simply good advice. but seek professional advice so it's tailored for yourselves. I equally ask you to consider the amount of fat and carbohydrates that you consume. Okay, fat deliberately could typically derive from meat cuisines. Okay, so if you're eating meat, you're equally eating fat. Yeah, particularly with the lamb and the pork and other, fatty foods like that. You know you're consuming fat. Yes, you can drain it. That's good. But the amount of fat we consume, particularly in the so-called West, in Europe, the Caribbean, the Americas, and many parts of the motherland of Africa and India and the subcontinental countries such as Bangladesh and Pakistan, where the consumption of sugar, salt, fat, and carbohydrate is just as high as it is in many parts of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas amongst our peoples. I ask you to consider reducing significantly the amount of fat you are consuming. And if you are consuming dairy products, I've just got to keep re-emphasizing. Dairy products are essentially another form of bovine fat or cow's fat, if you like. That's all it is. Cheese is just hardened cow's fat. That's all it is. It's simply fat. Yep, with a bit of flavor inserted, but fat. That's what it is. Please, I urge you to reduce significantly, if not withdraw it from your general nutritional intake. But the harmful effects are far outreach the beneficial nutritional intakes you might gain. And carbohydrate, and I know this is going to be painful, it was painful for me to realize, very often our primary source of carbohydrate is wheat-based products, yeah, or produce if you like. So the bread or anything with wheat in is jam-packed full of carbohydrate, which what we do, we store in our body, just like the fat, we store in our bodies. Yeah. So you see many members of our communities with these bloated shoulders, these bloated abdomens, these bloated thighs, and bloated buttocks, or bottoms in other places, if you like. Huh? You see them, yeah, bloated, yeah. And all too often, particularly in my own community, African heritage communities, yeah, whether from the continent or from the Caribbean, from the Americas or other places, born here in Britain, women are heavier than the men. Nowhere in the mammalian world, because we're mammals, are the women heavier than the men. But in our communities, in America, 80% of African American women are overweight, obese, and 8% of that figure are morbidly obese. In other words, so dangerous it's affecting their health and their general lifestyle. Here, it's between 65 and 75% here in Britain. But these are epidemic levels, if you like, dangerous levels, yeah? Long-term health implications levels. We have got to do better as a community. We must teach these habits, good habits, to our children. Yeah? To reduce significantly our fat and carbohydrate intake. Significantly. And I hear the pain in some of you. I hear it because it's a lifetime habit. I told you how long it took for me to reduce those sugar and salt intake. It takes time because you develop these habits. It's difficult to shake those habits. I get it. I get it. I get it. Whenever I feel the urge, I pause, take a deep breath, and count back 1, 2, 3. I will not. And I say it repeatedly if the temptation were to get that strong. I'm a grown man and I must be able to control my urges. Yeah? A grown adult, we must be able to control our urges. Yeah? Those habits, we must control them. Otherwise, they control you. And lastly, starch. And I know I can hear the cries now Our primary source of starch in our communities is through rice products and some root products, yeah, such as the yams, and of course, okay, those of you from West Africa with those traditions, of course, the jollof rice, yes, it's starch, and we eat it to excess. Yep, rice, we eat to excess. If you're from the Caribbean, as it were, and many parts of the Americas, you've got the rice and peas from the Americas, yeah? Or the soul food in the American, yeah? Yes, I hear you. I know. I get it. Yeah? These are part of our cuisine, an integral part of our cuisine. What is he saying? Yes, we eating these products to excess. To excess. Ideally, our meals should be no more than a fistful per serving, per sitting, I should say, per sitting, no more than a fistful. Ideally, I'm gradually reducing the amount of food I eat per day, but I've developed a habit. It's difficult to shake. So that one has taken longer than the other. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. To reduce my food intake, I'm eating in excess. Yeah. But I'm not overweight, fortunately. But far too many members of our communities are overweight, and it has long-term health implications. I gain no monetary gain here by communicating these messages to you. The satisfaction is to observe you responding and living healthier, longer, happier lives. That's the satisfaction. If that's hubris, that's the form of hubris I can go along with. Receiving and hearing and sensing your happiness. That's the type of hubris I can go with. The monetary type I will not go with. But the key messages here is that we are in control of what goes into our mouths. Okay? We are in control of what goes into our mouths. And the experts, of course, would tell us what is critical is that we eat more fruits and vegetables and keep meat to the minimum, if not remove it from our diet. But most certainly, fruits and vegetables, particularly the green vegetables. Start your day with fruits and vegetables, okay? I know some of you have got the habit of those cereals and you want to put in the bovine lactose, yeah, as your first consumption. No, particularly for grown adults. No, yeah, that's simply full of fat. Yeah, it's full of ingredients that will clog up your arteries eventually. Okay, so I urge you to hear these messages and pass it along to others. More fruits and vegetables, particularly the green vegetables. The experts will tell you it's necessary for us to drink the appropriate amount of water each day. Okay, water, we're more than 75% water. Okay, you're urged to consume more water. Okay, vital to our general health and well-being. I'm told you should consume between 2 to 3 liters of water per day. It will vary depending upon your height and body mass and so on. Okay, it will vary, and that's fair enough. Speak to your doctor, speak to your nutritionist, whoever has access to your medical records. He or she will be trained, I'm sure, to give you the advice that's appropriate and tailor-made for you. Mine is but general advice, okay? Specific advice, please speak to the professionals. But the general advice will generally hold for the overwhelming majority of people who are viewing this podcast through YouTube or Facebook, or are listening to us via galaxyafui.net or indeed Mixcloud. Generally, this will be true. Okay, more fruits and vegetables. Another vital part of who we are is that we must exercise. Part of the reasons why I feel so vigorous when I enter this studio, because I've exercised beforehand, spent a good half an hour or more running, stretching, pulling, and taking up my weights. Let me get my weights out. Oh, I love my weight, I tell you. I love my weights. There they are. Oh, there you are. Oh, there's my weights. You see them? I love my weights. And I do this 100 times in both arms. I do the same with my legs 100 times, pushing up those weights. I'm lifting, 40 kilos here, one arm. I do the same on the other. Do it 100 times. Do it every day. I can assure you, you will feel truly alive. You feel truly vigorous. Let me assure you of that. Yeah. Running is essential. Stretching is essential. Pushing your body is essential because we are made, yeah, that way. Yeah. Otherwise, our bodies start to close down. Yeah. And then you lose body mass. You lose fat muscles. Yeah. Forgive me. Did I say fat muscles? Get that wrong. That's contradiction. You lose muscle. Yeah. And you see your legs becoming thinner and thinner, and your arms becoming thinner and thinner. Or when you touch it, you see it shaking. Yeah. That's because you haven't exercised and used those muscles. Okay. So those muscles of atrophied, yeah, you lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. As you lose it, you're becoming weaker. As you become weaker, you become more vulnerable because your immune response is also responding, lowering yourselves. Yeah, you don't want that, do you? You don't want to die that way, do you? Through self-neglect. Do you want that to happen to you? No, I know you. I know you don't. I know you don't. Please hear these common sense messages, lifestyle messages. These are not health messages, these are lifestyle messages. Because fundamentally, the problem in our communities is our lifestyle. Okay? Where we are using a cuisine, a diet that was meant for people who work in the fields every day for 12 hours a day and are consuming enormous amount of energy. Yeah? Enormous amount of energy. We no longer do so. Therefore, our cuisine need to reflect our more sedentary lifestyle, where we're not exercising our body through our work. What we're doing, we have to deliberately go out and exercise our bodies. Hope that makes sense to you. Yeah. And I urge you to hear these messages, and I give it to you with love. Yeah. There is no financial gain. Yeah. My happiness is simply the happiness of hearing you give testimony that you're now thinking carefully about what you put through into your bodies. Yeah. You're thinking carefully about the potential impact of some of these ingredients and therefore reduce them significantly. And you're taking care of yourself, you're exercising, drinking the right amount of water each day. As important to exercise, drinking water, it's important to take care of your mental and spiritual health. Okay. If in doubt in regards to your mental health, please seek professional advice. I will say this again. If in doubt in regards to your mental health, please seek professional advice or speak to your loved ones, yeah, about how you're feeling about yourself so that your loved ones or your close friends can give you the advice and give you the support you need and hopefully seek out the professional advice. The spiritual health, of course, is vital, particularly we as African peoples, being such a spiritual people, it's a vital part of our identity, who we are as a people. So I urge you to seek out your spiritual advisors. Okay? I urge you to do so and be at one with yourself and the universe. Yeah? Be at one with yourself and the universe. Be at one. Each day, I meditate for at least 30 minutes per day. Sometimes it's shorter, often longer. And it provides an ability to focus, yeah, to settle, or if I may say so, using my Jamaican lingo, to settle, to find calmness and to center myself. Yeah. And in doing so each day, my focus, my determination is relentless. And for that reason, I was able to break those habits of a lifetime. Okay. Our parents did not know. We know today, and we can, and I urge you, we must do better for our children's sake. Teach them for good habits that we are aware they should take on as of today. But if you're having difficulty, please seek out professional advice. Alrighty, I'm going to pause there on the health or indeed lifestyle messages. Okay, they are very straightforward, very basic messages. Okay, and those basic rules are usually the rules that have a tremendous impact on our lives. Okay. Control your intake of sugar and salt or reduce it significantly, okay, over and above that what your body requires. Control your intake of carbohydrate and fat over and above what your body requires. Yeah. Control your intake of starch over and above what your body requires. Okay. And if in doubt, seek out professional advice. Exercise, a vital part of your general health and well-being. Take care of your mental health and seek out wise counsel from those who can listen to your feelings and respond and seek out and signpost you to your appropriate professional advice. And most critically, take care of your spiritual health, because we as a people are very spiritual, and spiritual health is as powerful as one's physical health. I urge you to pass on these messages to your friends, your loved ones, to your associates, to anyone you feel would benefit. Praise be to you, praise be to you. Okay, now then, thank you for that. I'm now going to go on to the next phase of the show, which is to recall some past contributors to the show. And haven't we been fortunate? We've had a luxury of riches of wonderful people who have appeared on the show. And I want to just remind you of a show I did about the first show, which is curious after about 3 years. My first show where I focused on men's health. Yeah. And specifically, I did a show on the 6th of May on prostate cancers or related conditions. The show was entitled Listen to the Professor. Okay. And we had Professor Frank, okay, a specialist in prostate cancer, a urologist, okay, but a specialist in prostate cancers related conditions, okay. And he provided some really sound health advice to men, okay. And I urge you, if you've got access to YouTube or Facebook or indeed Mixcloud, you can see and hear the recording. It was an information-rich show. I remind all men that prostate cancer is the biggest killer of men in the so-called Western world. Specifically, black men or men of African heritage. It is the biggest killer. Yeah, it is the biggest killer. But it's one of those conditions, if caught early, can be either managed or indeed significantly, its liability to you significantly reduced. I'm about to say cured, but I need to take advice if it actually can be cured. But I know it can be significantly managed. I'll let the professor, if he's listening, call in and just give us that advice. And Professor, if you are listening, the number that you could call in, or indeed those who are clinically trained in and understand the clinical diagnosis and treatment protocol for prostate cancers. I welcome your call in, because I think I just want to make sure we give out the right information to the people, okay? And the number to call, and it's at the bottom of the screen now. It's the new number, it's not the old number, it's the new number, which is 0203 289 6504, okay? If you are clinically trained, either a doctor or a nurse, and understand how to treat patients with prostate conditions, cancers or otherwise, okay? So it's 0203 289 6504. Love to hear from you, just to make sure the right information is being communicated, because your health, our health, is our wealth. We cannot understate how important it is. But for men, this is us. We've got to get this right. Otherwise, too many of us will die before our time. Okay? So I'm told that the PSA test, which is a straightforward test, is not invasive, okay, which is to in effect a blood test, okay, can look at the number of antigens or antibodies, as it were, in your blood to identify if you are have a prostate condition, the swelling of the prostate and likely impacts. So I urge you to think about this. If you're a man, think about it. If you're a man, an African man, a black man, plus 45 and over, okay, you absolutely should ask your doctor for for a test just to make sure that you're clear. Yeah, because you won't know unless you do the test, or unless it's really severe. That's when you know. Better to catch it early than not. I'm told I'm told up to a quarter or so of men or more potentially will get a prostate related condition, and it could not include a cancer. I cannot urge you not to sit there and listen to me and be afraid. I urge you to react. Visit your doctor. Yeah, visit your doctor. Seek out that simple test, just to make sure that you are clear. I hope that message receives you well, and you will not be compelled to become afraid. Men, I'm talking to men now, of course. Yeah, I speak to the women. Please urge your husbands. Yeah, urge your boyfriends. Yeah, I urge you to urge them. Go seek out professional advice, just to make sure that they're clear. Just to make sure that they're clear. Okay. So that was the show on the 6th of May, but it's a really important show. As I said, I've had many shows on women's health. That was my very first show after 3 years on men's health. Also, now I want to go to the show I did thereafter. Forgive me, earlier than that, on the 14th of January, Simon's Education. And that show was focused on how to unlock your genius. Okay? And genius exists amongst African peoples, black peoples, above average amongst all the human ethnic groups, above average when given the same level of resource and input. Africans display levels of genius above all others. Yeah, which you could expect that's not actually really surprising, given the same equal treatment. So Simon Education, I recommend it, both online and in-person courses. Yeah, and this goes right across the board. But most importantly, there are many community courses designed to raise consciousness. Yeah, African history. Yeah. True African history is amongst the many courses that he provides. SimonEducation.com. Well done, David Simon, and your wonderful wife. Well done. Keep up the good work. Okay. And some of you might remember I did a show which for reason didn't get the response I anticipated, but you know what? That's symptomatic of our community. And that show was on the 21st of January, and its focus was the African or Black nuclear family matters. Curious, that show didn't receive the response I anticipated. You know, if you're in a situation in which 80% of your children are born out of wedlock, yeah, and only a single parent, yeah, often women, are left to rear and prepare the next generation. As many of you be well aware, without my elaborating further, that's had a profound impact on our community, on our ability to generate wealth. Yeah. It's had a profound impact on the general health and well-being of those families. Yeah? Families with a mum and dad who are proactively involved in their children's lives in quantum leaps improve the life chances of those children. Yeah? Improve the life chances. They're mentally more stable, educationally more likely to excel, emotionally, as I say, stable. Mhm. And they make good future life partners, if you like, good husbands, good wives. Yeah. Because they've got the male and female energy imbued in them, and the values are imbued in them. Okay? Healthy values, healthy values. And we've seen the impact of these families led by a single parent it's had on our community. But it's in our power to change this. We've got to decide we will do better. We've got to decide we will do better. I say to young men, I get it, I was a young man myself. I understand the heat, the desire to express ourselves through that way, yeah? To procreate, if you like. I get it, I get it, I get it, okay? I can't speak for the women. I let the woman come and talk about the women, okay? But I can speak for the men, I get it, okay? But I say to the fathers, yeah? I say to the uncles, I say to the grandfathers, okay? We must school our sons, our nephews, our cousins. We must teach them to have respect for themselves. Yeah? And what comes out of their bodies, okay, is the source of life. So we must do it in a way that is responsible. And only have children when you're ready, both emotionally and economically ready to take on that wonderful role as a parent, as a father, yeah? Someone who will play a full role in that child's life. Only do so. Only expose yourself when you feel you are ready, emotionally and economically ready. I'd ask for the mothers, yeah, for the aunties, for the grandmothers, yeah, to do the same for the daughters. Okay? Because the impact on our community has been profound. Absolutely profound. But it's within our gift, it's within our power to change and prepare the next generation in ways that is wholesome and gives them a good fighting chance. I come across far too many families living in abject poverty because the man and the woman are not working together to rear the sons and daughters. Okay? Abject poverty. And we must and we will do better. I'm very confident of that. So that show on the 21st of January, it's available. You can see the recording on YouTube and Facebook. I urge you to review that show because that show was a profound overview of the state of our families. I urge you to review it and I gladly receive your commentary. Gladly receive your commentary. Okay? Gladly receive your commentary. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just take that off my screen, take the number off the screen, okay? And I'm going to say to you all, I'm going to bring in my guests shortly, okay? But if you want to communicate with the studio, you can via YouTube and Facebook, send in your messages. I'll gladly note your messages and any questions to my guests, you can channel via the YouTube and Facebook chat facility. Okay, so I welcome that. I welcome that. Don't you worry. I welcome that. But I will say to you all, If in doubt about the messages I've communicated today, seek out professional advice. Okay? Mine is general messages. It will not always be precise, but the intent, and I hope you would appreciate it, is that you would take control. Because this is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Empower ourselves. Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. We have the power to define. We will define, and we will define the future for our children, for the next generation, through our consensus working, not the ego, working in consensus with a common aim and a common purpose. So today's show will be focused on the Windrush pioneers. I was told recently I'm a part of that community. Can you imagine? My parents were absolutely pioneers, okay? I'm not going to get into that in a moment. Let me now bring in my guest, because it's going to be a truly thrilling, empowering experience for you all, okay? Truly empowering. So let's bring in my wonderful guest, someone I've known for a little while now. Gosh, so many decades. But anyway, we need to elaborate that later on. Anyway, let me bring my guest in. Let's get this right. This technology works. Here we go. Let's bring my guest in. Let's bring him up top. There you go. Okay. Oh, my guest. Can you hear me? You're fine.
I can hear.
Oh, you've got a very soft voice. I'm going to ask you to.
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh, let me adjust my volume on you.
Put the volume up.
I am adjusting your volume. There you go. No, you don't do anything. It's my end. It's fine. Just want to make sure that the audience can hear you well.
All right.
Okay. Oh, he's so calm, isn't he? Huh? Look at that.
Okay.
Now, let me introduce my guest first of all. In fact, my guest is Arthor Torrington. Okay, a truly distinguished elder, if I may refer to you as such. Okay, and someone who's an example. I pause there. A true example, because we are all example, but I paused there. I wanted to get the words right. An example of someone who sees wrong and responds to it. Doesn't passively accept wrong, particularly if it's done to your person, your family, your loved ones, and your community. And not afraid to stand up and be counted. Is that right, Arthur?
That's correct. Yeah.
Absolutely, he says. That's correct, he says. There you are. He's so prim and proper.
Okay.
And Arthur, I'm going to go right into this because whilst I've known you for a number of decades, for a good, 30, 40 decades or more, this is the first time we are going to really sit down and rap, okay? This is not an interview. This is where we're going to sit down and talk. But as we communicate, as we have this dialogue, Arthur,
right,
I want the audience to get to know you as well as I've known you, and those important people who've been around you, okay? So I'm going to start off by asking my first question. Now, I've known you, as I said, for many years, but my audience have not had that privilege. Arthur, who or what has most influenced you and why? Let's find out.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could easily say there's one person who was the mayor of Southwark, and that is Samuel Beaver King. I think he is the one who has influenced a lot of things that I've done, at least from 1983. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at the past, 30 plus 35 years. So I would say, the late Sam King.
Why was he that influential with you?
Well, in the sense that he showed leadership. He showed that there's a way of doing things which will bring positive results in the community,
Hmm.
and that there would be change. I think he's always talking about change, bringing about change in a particular way, and showing effective leadership. So in that sense, I'm looking to him in terms of his influence,
Hmm.
and I think his leadership, well, for so many years.
Hmm. Hmm. And did you meet Sam King, MBE, and the first black mayor of Southwark Council here in London? Okay. Did you meet him here in London or in the Caribbean? And where in the Caribbean are you from?
Well, I am from Guyana, which used to
Aha.
be British Guyana.
Oh, British Guyana. Let's give a big shout out. A big
That's
shout out to
that's
them.
where I'm from. But I met Sam King when he was the mayor
Yeah.
in 1983. So when he became the mayor, I met him a few months after.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
You are right. It was a powerful moment in the history of London, and most certainly here in Southwark, where I live. His memory, his impact is still with us today. That much I can assure you. Okay,
Right.
let me assure you that much. Okay, I'm just going to alter my screen setting, I think. Now then, my second question: what was life like in the Caribbean before you came to Britain?
Well, life was ticking on, and obviously it was a colony, and therefore, as anything else, colony life is not like London life or British life. Life in Britain, it is just a life of getting things done, seeing how the older ones manage things, and yeah, it was a slow life, but at least it was pleasant,
Mhm.
and so on. But the main thing there is that life was colony life.
Yes, yes. Were you safe there? Was it safe?
Yes, safe. That's right.
Yeah,
I was safe. I never felt in any way that it was threatening. It was safe, like most
yeah, yes,
Caribbean cities, and towns, very similar.
yeah. And all your family was there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
spread all over the world. I mean,
Yes,
I
yeah.
think, as you well know, West Indians travel
Mhm.
are everywhere.
Yes, yes,
So you
yes.
know,
And
families everywhere.
okay. And in terms of the employment prospect, you knew where you were going to work once you were an adult? Yeah.
Well, at least, yeah, I had in mind. I mean, I was a young man, and therefore I was going to get a job eventually in London. So that was how I was thinking.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So tell me then, what was your perception of Britain before you came to Britain? How was it perceived?
Yes, well, Britain was a big city. Britain had a big city. London is the big city,
Hmm.
and I was able to experience life in the city. Lots of people, lots of buildings, tall buildings. And in those days, you had deep craters in London
Yes,
because of the bombing.
yes, yes.
So at least we had that scenario of how a city would be, how a city was after a war.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. So you perceive Britain as being big, London being a metropolis, as it were. Okay,
Yes.
everything about it was big. Were you ever told the streets of London were paved with gold?
Well, not really. I never believed that, but it was just
Yes.
a talk you hear.
Uh-huh.
But one didn't believe it, but that's just something that people say.
Right.
Really.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
It's interesting, isn't it? How such
Mhm.
propaganda can permeate the
Absolutely.
consciousness, isn't it? Huh?
That's right. That's right. Yes,
I always laugh when I hear that said. I always laugh.
that's right.
So tell me then, just to take it further. Did you need a passport or visa to enter Britain?
No, I got a passport, and I still have the passport.
Did you have a passport? And was that a, a, a British passport?
It's
What
a
was
British
it?
passport. That's right. I
Hold on a
entered the
second. So,
country. I entered the
yes,
country with a British passport and as a British citizen.
well, hold on a second. So just to make it clear, and it's important because you came to this country what year? What year?
I came in the 1960s. I came as a young man, as a youth,
Hmm.
and therefore, I had my passport, and I had a lot of expectations.
Right.
And therefore, one had a lot of ideas as to how life should be. And yeah, as anything else, as everybody else at that age, at that time, I should say, we had big ideas about our future,
Yeah.
success, and so on. So,
Can I
I
just?
mean, I was no different, really.
I know you were. I did want to make sure the audience can appreciate the circumstances. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in my case, for example, when my parents brought me here, Jamaica had not yet achieved its independence. Okay.
Okay.
I can't recall when Guyana received its independence, but did you arrive before or after independence?
I arrived before independence. Yes, I would say I arrived before independence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were covered under the
But don't forget that Guyana was independent in 1964. So I
Indeed.
arrived before 64.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. So, under the 1948 Act, if I'm right, that if you were born in Britain or the colonies, you were born British. That's right?
No. We were
Okay.
always British. No. The act had little significance apart from written in the way it was.
Mhm.
But we were always British from 1834, when we became
You tell them.
unfree, if that's the
Hmm.
word, or
Yep.
partly free. We were British. We weren't British before.
Hmm.
We were just British property before.
Yes.
You
Yes.
must realize that enslavers ensured that we were never given that right to be citizens,
Hmm.
but we were only property, because that was how slaves were.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
in 1834, we became, I would say, citizens and British in every respect.
And that's an important observation. And I'm really pleased you corrected me. Often we focus on the 1948 Act, but actually, long before then, yeah, you and I were born British. Okay.
Absolutely. Our parents and grandparents were British. And then when we came into the country, we were British, and we had a right to be in this country because we were a part of the empire.
Absolutely right. And it's important. And I've said it a few times now, I did make sure it sinks in. I want those who are listening, those who are particularly born before and in this country before 1972, 73, when we talk about that later on, Arthur, to
That's right.
understand the significance of what Arthur has just said. We're born British. Okay, and therefore the right to enter Britain, it actually didn't need to have a passport, but many did. Yep, I know many arrived without a passport and simply had a boarding ticket and came to Britain. There you are. Okay, so that is actually the true situation, and Arthur is living proof of it. Living proof of
But
it.
I think let's be clear for the audience's purpose. Those who came and had boarding passes, boarding pass is only like a record that the government would keep if they, I think they
Correct.
destroyed them, most of them. But everybody coming into the country has to have a passport.
Yes.
The younger ones who came with their parents could have come under the parents' passport.
Correct.
Or some
I did.
who came in arms, they were baby in arms, they might not bother with passports. But the main thing is, if you don't have a passport, you were sent back home.
And the significance of what Arthur has described there is that as you were born British, okay, it had to take an act of parliament to take that identity away from you later on. But I'll get to that in a moment, because I just want to make sure, because I'm aware that there are, even here in Southwark, across London, and in fact across Britain, people from the Caribbean and parts of West Africa, okay, for the empire, okay, who've been in this country for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, okay, and have not formalized their status, okay. They're concerned about the behavior of the Home Office, okay. I'm just going to say it as it is: the racist behavior of the Home Office. Simple as that. Yep, that's what's happened. Okay, we have not formalised the arrangement. But I want to urge those who are listening to remember that you were born British. Okay, and it'd be extremely difficult for Britain to send you out of this country. because you were born British. Okay. Tell me, I'm just going to move on now. Arthur, you arrived here in the 60s, okay? And I remember the
Mm.
60s, okay? Uh,
Okay.
I remember the Teddy Boys, the Skinheads, the British National Party. I remember some signs. I remember English people, Scotch, Welsh people, some Irish people, their general behaviour. I formed an opinion that an impression of them, which has stayed with me for the whole of my life, because it happened when I was very young. Okay, what was your impression of Britain when you arrived?
Yeah, well, I haven't had any kind of interaction with Teddy Boys or other
Okay.
people of that sort of nature. I have to admit that I had no kind of interaction, but I've heard a lot about the
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Boys, what the Teddy Boys did. I heard about the Notting Hill riots.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about the Kelso Cochrane murder
Yes.
in Notting Hill. So, I mean, I possibly have had an easier time than other people who lived in different parts of London, but at least I remember those days. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So if I just probe that further, because of course, in coming here, the British governments at the time had encouraged um, my parents, yourselves, to come to Britain because Britain was short of labour. Yep.
Now, I think we've got to be very, very cautious here
Okay.
and say this. In 1948 and before 1948, the British were not keen to have West Indians here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They weren't encouraging anybody even up to 1948.
Mm-hmm.
So we have records to show that they did not want black people here, but in the sense that that was not their idea.
Mm-hmm.
They preferred to have, after the war, preferred to have employed German prisoners of war
Mm-hmm.
instead of employing or asking West Indians to come over. So you hear a lot about, the government wanting West Indians to come. The only thing they did, which is nearly like that, is to ask a lot of ex-service men and women to remain in the UK after the war, after 1945. All right. So they were the only ones. So the ones that went back to the West Indies in 1947 on leave, people like Houghton Christian and Donald Clark, some of those people I knew, they were asked to come back. They were asked to come back and help to rebuild the mother country and to work in the RAF. There were many who also were involved in building and maybe creating ammunitions and stuff like that. A lot of them stayed, in the hundreds or the thousands, I'm not sure. But it's only in the 1999 and 1949, 1950, when they began to ask directly people to
Yes.
come over
Yes.
to work. So that was when the call came.
Yes. And if I may say to the audience, note what he said. That's when the call came. In other words, right across the Caribbean, West Africa, and so on, there was a urging of local talent. That's what our parents are, local talent, to become pioneers, to come to Britain to work. Okay. Now, following World War II, Britain had a serious labour shortage. But to help to rebuild the economy, an estimated 1.3 million workers were needed. That was a shortage. And they sought those workers from the empire, the colonies, as it were. Okay. So the British government actively invited fine young Caribbeans, fine young West Africans in particular, to take up the job vacancies that weren't being filled. Now, many, and in the case of my mum, were invited to work as nurses, midwives, as auxiliary workers in the NHS, cleaners, cooks, and porters. Many went into factory labouring or employed by the buses or the trains, the undergrounds. Yeah, yeah. So industries such as British Rail and the newly created National Health Services heavily recruited from the Caribbean and Africa. But institutions such as the renowned Metropolitan Police. And I recall very recently watching that video, Arthur, of Sam King when he was rejected, despite the fact he'd been an officer in the army. He was rejected by the police when he applied for to be recruited, based solely on his ethnicity, not on his qualifications, ability, solely on his ethnicity. It is amazing. Okay. What impact do you think that experience had on our people at the time, Arthur?
Well, I mean, in the case of Sam King, I mean, he had the qualifications, he passed the test, he had the background, he had the height, he had a voice, he had everything to be a police. But in those days, they weren't going to employ black people in the police. So that was a given by them. But Sam didn't realize that the country was so racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Profound, isn't it? Profound. And of course, the more recent report on the Metropolitan Police Service, I was about to say force, but it should be considered as a service, okay? Not only affirms that it still remains institutionally racist, but it's also, of course, sexist, and of course, it has a strong bias of people from the LGBTQ plus communities. Profound. The cancer has grown in the Metropolitan Police Force, and I hope the Casey report is accepted by the government and implemented in full. That's a future show, which I'll come back to, listeners. But let me just refer back to the situation as was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, fortunately the 90s, even up to today in some cases. Okay, so Sam King, that examples of the best of us was refused by the Metropolitan Police Service purely on his ethnicity.
Yeah.
So, of course, I now come to an area that I want to discuss with you, Arthur, because, of course, you've got the Windrush Foundation, which I'll come to in a second. But I want to look at legislation that received the royal assent. So the then Queen of Jamaica gave royal assent to the 1965 Race Relations Act, okay, which but finally enshrined in law. It banned racial discrimination. Okay, what difference does that make to your life?
It was a limited law. You know, that's the thing about 65. That's why
Explain.
have 3 different amendments or updating. So it was just an initial law that came in to do with, I suppose, buildings and various things to do with people, but not strong enough. And that's why in 68 it had to be updated. And then in 1976, you had a better act that decided on racial discrimination being illegal in terms of, color, in terms of ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it even affected people from Scotland and Wales. So
yes.
It was a broad approach, to race relations.
Mm-hmm. So just talk us through this, because of course the reason for these acts of parliament, okay, was because of the sheer number of racist acts that have been carried out by ordinary English, Scotch, Welsh people and Irish people against people with a different colour, different hue. Okay, the sheer numbers of them resulted in the campaign that by people like yourself, my own parents, and others, of course, from those communities who recognise the sheer injustice and the very idea that there wasn't a law to protect people. Okay, so I'm pleased you identified the follow-up law that was intended to strengthen the law so judges could implement it and send people to prison. Okay, was it enough?
Well, it was never enough. That's why you had lots of legislations after 1976,
Mhm.
or indications, and then you had what is now called the Equality Act.
Yes.
But the main thing there was that the tightening of race relations law is always important. Tightening it up, it still needs tightening, but it's taken a long time.
Mhm.
In the 1950s, there was no such law.
Yeah.
Okay, Britain claims that it was the first country, to bring in, race relations law, and that's good, and that's to be commendable, um,
Yes.
because it was pressure that made
Yes.
that happen.
Yes.
Pressure on activists like Sam King, Claudia Jones, and other people in those days. And we
Awesome.
must also say that not only African Caribbean people were involved in bringing about change, but people from Asia,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Asian Caribbean people, Chinese Caribbean people, all got involved in making changes or helping to make changes to the law and bringing about, equality.
Yes. And well said, Arthur. I think that's an important recognition here that it was a whole community effort. Okay, identifying the wrong and seeking that those wrongs should not be protected by the absence of a law, that the laws are continuously reviewed and tightened to ensure such behavior, there is a consequence for such
Yeah,
behavior. Okay. And I want to make sure it's understood that it would not have happened without the pressure from the people.
that's right.
I, I always use the analogy with the enslavement of our ancestors. Okay, you hear a lot about William Wilberforce. Being a wonderful abolitionist. His family, of course, is an enslaver family, and were also compensated, okay, when it was formally abolished. Okay. But the enslavement of our ancestors would not have occurred unless we continuously resisted, continuously rebelled to make the enslavement of our ancestors too expensive, economically unviable, okay, too costly in resources, okay. So, understanding the local economics, we continued to resist. And as a result of our direct action, yeah, that the enslavement of our ancestors had to formally come to a halt. Okay. Some may argue that there's now another form of enslavement through economic enslavement, but that doesn't only include ourselves, of course. Okay, but it's through our direct action, yeah, that change happens. Which is why I do these shows. That's why this is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Emphasizing it is ours for the sake. Okay. I'm conscious, of course, that you, Arthur, um, um, have created an interesting organization called the Windrush Foundation.
Yeah, myself and Sam King.
I'm going to ask you. Yep, I'm going to say that. Just
All
tell
right.
us a little bit more about the Windrush Foundation. When was it established? Why did you establish it? And what are your ultimate aims and objectives?
Okay, it was started. The idea came from both Sam King and myself in 1995. In fact, going back, 20, 30, let me see, nearly 30 years now.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about 28, that's right, 28 years now. We got together and we believed that forming an organization would help to interest young people. It was an idea to help young people to understand the whole journey of West Indians to this country. The
Mhm.
journey in terms of um, the boat trip, the ship, getting into the port, coming into this country, and participating in the life of the country and making things better for the younger generation. So it was that. But then it was more so Sam King's vision, because he was on the Empire Windrush. So the Empire Windrush became the focus
Mhm.
of the story,
Yes.
and it's really telling Sam King's story. So what we did eventually was to begin to organize the 50th anniversary of the arrival of the ship, because
Okay.
Sam King was focused so much on
Yes.
the ship's arrival and not so much the arrival of other people who would have come on different ships. But so Sam was focused on Windrush, which he should well do, and that became the project for 1998. So we lobbied people, we lobbied Parliament,
Mhm.
I should say parliamentarians. We
Yes.
lobbied Trevor Phillips from the he had his own private company, and we lobbied him to go to the BBC and to see whether he can get a documentary done
Mhm.
on the journey of, I suppose, the Windrush, which he did.
Mhm.
So in 1998, we had what is called the 50th anniversary commemoration of Windrush, and that was a big event, and that was where we had a liftoff in terms of Windrush.
Wow. Wow. Um, so what's the significance of the 22nd of June? Just so I'm clear.
Because the arrival took place, the disembarkation of the men and women who came from the West Indies happened on the 22nd of June, 1948. So that's a significant day. That was a Windrush day. That was the first Windrush day, so to speak.
Mhm.
And therefore, that particular day is remembered, and it's
Yes.
still remembered now. And we have what we now call, or not now call, but but what is still called Windrush Day, 22nd of June each year.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Let me just go that particular slide. There you are. I can bring it up on my screen. Get up on my
Mhm.
screen properly. Of course, be nice. There you go. And I'm wondering, as you as that came on my screen, as you did this, did you believe that it would last the test of time?
Well, we have to be very, very cautious about Windrush, because see, Windrush is only one element or chapter in the presence of West Indians in the country. One
Indeed,
chapter.
indeed.
It's not a total history. I think a lot of people are saying that Windrush is also West Indian history, and they conflate Windrush and
Yes,
Caribbean history. No, Windrush is a particular kind of history, tracing men and women from 1948 through the eyes of Sam King,
yes,
not through the eyes of other people.
yes.
And I think that what has gone wrong was that Windrush Day now gives the impression to some people that it's all of the history, and that's not true.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. Such an important observation, and it is astonishing how very intelligent people can fall into that trap as well, huh? Okay.
Oh, yes.
This is my very first occasion to say this to you in a public forum. I want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you for creating the Windrush Foundation. I want to thank you for your work in this area. Been an incredibly important piece of work. Okay, and of course, the 22nd of June is now being marked formally. Okay,
Yes.
it's not yet a public holiday. What do you think about that idea?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be a holiday, because I think that, again, it's marking a day that the late Sam King had in mind from 1948. A lot of people don't realize that
Mhm.
Sam King had in mind the 22nd of June as a particular day from 1948, not
Indeed.
just from when the government say that
Yes.
there's Windrush Day. We
Yes.
don't have to rely on the government for Windrush Day. Windrush Day was always something that Sam King had in mind.
Mhm.
So in that sense, we look at that aspect of it, not government pronunciation,
Mhm.
because he met up with his friends, you see,
Yes.
regularly.
He did.
Those who came on the ship, he would meet with them around this June, and commemorate the day. Like anybody else who attends a university, you have an alma mater, you meet up with your university friends.
Yes.
That was how Sam King began this Windrush journey, or
Absolutely.
this Windrush project. You
Yes.
see, it wasn't just plucked out of the air in 2018,
Mhm.
as some people think.
Yeah. I've got to tell you, as you know, I knew him personally. He was the first mayor of Southwark. He's one of the reasons I entered politics. One of these remarkable, charismatic personalities that could draw you in. And if you had doubt, he took them away from you. And so you could be yourself, be your real selves, What a remarkable personality and a great loss to humanity, not just to our community. Yeah. So I want to thank you for his work. Okay, and long may you continue this work with the Windrush Foundation and all the other Windrush related organisations that have sprung up around it, I might add. So well done to you. Well done. Well done. Okay. Now I'm going to open the phone lines and I'm going to ask another question. So those of you who are listening, and if you are members of the Windrush generation, or indeed a child of the Windrush generation, so am I apparently. We want to hear from you. Okay, I don't want to hear you moaning. I want to hear stories that empower. Yeah, inform and encourage, inform that motivate people to act and to do good. Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in hearing from you. So the number to call, if you wish to call in, I'm opening the phone lines particularly early today, but I'm conscious that this audience who are listening to this particular show, which is live today on Saturday, and of course this is the 1st of July, it's going out live, and if you're awake and you're alert, and we've now touched your nerves, engaged you sufficiently, pick up the phone, as it were. Call this number, 0203 289 6504. I'm going to put at the bottom of the screen, and in fact, I need to adjust the screen so we are still there. I'm going to put you center stage now. I'll put you center stage. There you are. We can see your personage now. Call in. We'd love to hear from you. This will be an interesting interaction where we can share wonderful memories. Yeah, that's what we want to do today. Okay. My question to you now, Sam. Sam, indeed. Oh, there you go. Arthur.
Okay.
Is the government listening?
Well, it all depends on the word listening to the community. Well, the government doesn't always listen. They sometimes listen. But I'd like to say that when it comes to Windrush, in 2018, Windrush, the government couldn't avoid the word Windrush. In the past, I don't think I can remember them listening or even considering things to do with Windrush, but they woke up in 2018 because of the scandal.
Yes.
There was a scandal. This particular scandal was not a Windrush scandal. It was an immigration scandal. Because for it to be a Windrush scandal, the people who came on the Empire Windrush would have had to be, shall I say, culprits.
Yes.
There would have had to be criminals, to have been seen, to be, a part of a scandal, doing something wrong or whatever. But somehow the media, and most of the media were the ones that first began talking about Windrush scandal. That's where the term came from.
Right.
And then the government picked up on it.
Okay.
And the government even, I would say, annexed the kind of Windrush things that Windrush Foundation was doing. You see? So that's how the government got involved in Windrush, because they couldn't help but, I suppose, go along with that term, which they possibly amplified and made it their own.
The Wendy Williams report, of course, looks at both the whole process of seeking out and regulating the immigration status of the Windrush generation, and also the compensation scheme. Okay, what's your opinion, Arthur?
Well, the government through the Home Office set up the Wendy Williams investigation through Wendy Williams herself, and she made a report. But she made a lot of assumptions as well. She was following their terms of reference.
Yes.
She was using their terminology, and she did a report which was accepted um, at that time. And well, I
Continue,
read the
Tom.
report. The report is quite a long report, very meaningful. Recommendations were made at what the government should do, and so on. But then you have a new government that isn't necessarily following all the recommendations, and I think this is a pity. They were agreed on when Wendy Williams spoke, 2000, and I think 2020. I think she made the report. But the point there is that the government agreed to follow the recommendations, but we don't think that they're following it.
Okay. Can you just maybe just elaborate, just for the benefit of the audience who would not have read the report? I have, but I know they have not read the report. Which of these sort of key areas you believe they're not following the?
Well, they were supposed to set up what Wendy Williams called like an immigration czar, or a person responsible for immigration matters. Setting up a person, a government minister maybe, who would look into specifically immigration. Well, then, that is not what's being followed now, because I think the present Home Office secretary has other ideas about that, and therefore there's no such czar, never has been, and so on. And again, they're not following things that are straightforward. For example, certain recommendations to do, I suppose, with how people are treated, compensation. For example, things like training.
Yes.
Things like meetings with a meeting with the community. Just haven't been followed.
Right.
See, I can't detail everyone that has been followed,
Yes.
but some key ones. But even so, life still goes on. I'm not sure how much pressure the Caribbean community is putting on them. Maybe not enough pressure.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. In fact, let me just follow through on that, because I want to just capture that, because of course we've got the Windrush Foundation. That's fine. How can the audience participate and give support to the foundation?
I would say, in terms of, I would say, firstly, knowing what we do. I think to participate is also to know, to learn what we do. And then by learning what we do, people could then have a better understanding of how they can participate in terms of helping others to learn. Now, what we are particular about, Windrush Foundation, we're particular about the people who came on the ship.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? That's a fact. By using the words Windrush Foundation, we're saying, look, this whole Windrush story has a particular foundation.
Yes.
Because the people who came on the ship,
yes,
that particular generation, they were the Windrush generation.
The pioneers, if you like. The pioneers.
The pioneers and the generation. Yeah, they were the pioneers. And in other words, what it was called, what can be called, they were pioneering members of the Windrush generation. That is how you can put that term. Pioneering members of the Windrush generation. Now, we know that there's a big story within that particular group of people. And right now, we're preparing a book which would have the profiles of about 80 people who came on the ship,
right,
whose lives and work have been outstanding. People who might not be recognized, who have contributed to and enriched Britain from 1948. So that's the kind of focus we are making. Is a focus on those who came on the ship.
Right.
So, in other words,
yes,
when we were set up as a heritage organization.
Okay.
You see, you have different things about organizations and charities. Are you a charity to do heritage? Yes, we are involved in heritage. We're also involved in race relations. They are
Yes.
also involved in anti-racist activities.
Absolutely.
They're also involved in creating educational resources. We're also involved in working within the arts and the sciences and so on, working for the betterment of the community.
Okay. So again, are you able to recall the URL for your Windrush Foundation?
To do what? To record?
How does one contact the Windrush Foundation? You've got
Oh,
to.
I see. Yeah, but okay, of course, it's something like
Oh,
windrushfoundation.com. That is our website.
okay.
www.windrushfoundation, one word, .com, which is
I'm
quite
going to go to it right now for you.
quite
Let me
yeah,
go to
quite,
it right
quite
now.
straightforward. And on that site, we have reams and I would say millions of words that talk about the pioneers, talk about those who served in the war. And let's face this point.
There you go.
If there was no war, there would have been no Windrush.
Indeed. Yep.
That wouldn't have happened because the ship um, was a German ship. Germany lost the war, and therefore you lose the war, you lose your assets,
Yeah,
you
indeed.
lose your property, and
Indeed.
therefore Britain took hold of that ship
Mhm.
and the German ship and
Yes.
renamed it Empire Windrush.
Yes.
So that's why we have Empire Windrush as
Yes.
such. But that's one of those things.
Uh,
And another point to make, I want to make very strongly, is that if there was no Sam King, there would have been no Windrush,
mhm.
because he's the only man that I know that preserves so well the ship on which he came.
Yes.
That's the point. How many people that you know have preserved stories about their ship
This is
that,
true.
that they came on?
Yes.
And in terms of records of the ship,
Mhm.
what happened on the ship, other people who were on the ship. The only other person I know now who has done something about that is Alfred Gardner, who lives in Leeds. He has a new book, the memoirs of Alfred Gardner.
Right.
And he talks about the ship. He talks about his journey. He talks about his life and contribution to the war,
Yes.
and about how life has been for him since he returned in 1948, because he served in the war
Yes.
in 1944. You
Yes.
see, so those are the two records that we have. And there's another book that was written before the two of those two people, and that was written by a gentleman, Mr. Murray, who lived in Nottingham. Apart from that, there isn't a lot of information about direct connections with the ship.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask you in that case, and thank you for that. I've opened up your website, and that again for the audience. That's the windrushfoundation.com.
Yes.
I'm on the profiles, and I see some rather impressive people noted here. Norma Best. Tell us about Norma Best.
Okay, Norma Best. She was born in British Honduras. She volunteered for to help the war, and she became, an auxiliary in the war, connected with the army. She came over and served. A very bright woman. She died in her 80s, and sorry, 90s actually, or mid 90s.
Okay.
And she became a teacher. She became, as far as we've heard, and she's told me, I should say, the first black head teacher, primary teacher in Brent.
Oh wow!
And
Okay.
that's a long time ago. I mean,
Yes.
after all, these are pioneers of that generation. And Norman, she's no longer alive, but I knew her reasonably. Okay.
I see here you have a short clip on her. Is that right?
Yes, Norma.
Oh, let me see if we can make this work. Would that be fantastic to hear her voice?
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Let's see if we can make this work.
Try that.
Youngsters.
I was looking for adventure. I've always wanted to travel from a little girl. And I was brought up by my grandfather and my grandmother. And he used to tell me to study hard and travel. So all my school days spent studying and yearning to travel. So when the opportunity came along to join the ATS, although I feared it would be dangerous, I had no hesitation in volunteering. After all the parties and the excitement had died down, I realized that I couldn't live there because I had spent 5 years in England and my outlook on life was completely different. I knew I was going to leave, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. So I thought I would work. I returned to teaching and started to save for when I would be able to leave.
Wow.
That's very good. That is so good of you there, because Martin. Because I mean, I've never seen it done that way, where you can pick it up so clearly. Because was an outstanding lady.
Yes.
She wanted to stay in this country. She had studied at Durham University to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
She got a job in Cambridge.
Yes.
And then they told her, well, no, you can't stay. She had to go back to British Honduras. And that's what she did. But she came back in the 1950s. But it just showed you that she had the talent, the ability, university education,
Absolutely.
in terms of becoming a teacher, had a job that she could have gone to in Cambridge, but then the government didn't want her here.
Can you imagine?
Because she was black.
Can you imagine? Thank you. This is such a powerful expose. Doing this with you live, I cannot tell you, it's the youngsters, it's our children, our grandchildren. They're the ones we must share this knowledge with. There's another personality I recall, Cy Grant.
Oh, yes, I knew him. I knew him.
Yes, tell us about Cy Grant. Yeah.
But again, you see, Cy Grant, he was from British Guyana, which is now Guyana. He actually came as a young man to become a pilot, but eventually he was asked to do the role of a navigator. And then he was actually, his plane was shut down over a part of Holland. He was taken by the Nazis, so he became a prisoner of war.
Yes.
For 2 years. And then he was liberated by the Russians. And then he came back to this country. Couldn't get a job.
Yeah.
He studied to be a lawyer, and he couldn't get a particular, apprenticeship or whatever it's called, a practice in those days. So, because he couldn't become a lawyer, he became an actor.
That's right.
And he became an actor doing tremendous roles, even roles with famous people of the day in the 1950s. And he became a person on television, on the Today program. Or the Torrington Night program, I should say, with Cliff Mitchell-Moore, an outstanding character, versatile, a singer, you name it, he was a writer, an activist.
I remember him, you see. I see there's a video of him here.
Yes.
Let's
hear it.
Let's play this one.
In 1940,
it's slightly longer.
They were not accepting men of color into the Royal Air Force. A good friend of mine, Sidney Kennard, whose father was an Englishman and his mother was a West Indian lady, he had a pilot's license because they were wealthy, and he'd got one in America. He actually applied, came to England in 1940 to join the Royal Air Force. A very handsome, light-skinned Guyanese, and they turned him down. But when things got bad, of course, they get turned to the colonies. And I was one of the first 4 from Guyana to volunteer. Well, when I was shot down, of course, it created quite a bit of a stir because, I don't think there were many black airmen in those days, and particularly black officers in the Royal Air Force. And I was in solitary confinement. After I'd been in solitary confinement for about 5 days, I was pulled out in the bright sunshine. A photograph was taken of me. I didn't know for what purpose. At the end of I was shot down in 43. At the end of 44, of course, we were aware that the Russians were approaching. We could see refugees fleeing, the German refugees running, going north, south, east, west. As the Russians approached, we knew that soon we could be liberated. But then we were, in January 45, we were suddenly told that we were going to be evacuated, leave the camp. It was in the middle of winter. It was a severe winter. The roads were covered in snow, and, we marched for 5 or 6 days in the snow and stopping off in barns and things like that. It was really tough. And landed up in a place about 60 kilometers southeast of Berlin called Luckenwalde, which is a huge holding camp where thousands of prisoners of all ranks, and it was a really disgusting, flea-ridden, disgusting place with hardly any food. There were no Red Cross bars from. That was when it was terrible. Suddenly, from being this privileged place where we could read music, we had bands, we had sports events, we had a theater. We had everything that you could possibly have except a woman. Okay.
So really,
suddenly you got into a measly place which was filthy, bedridden with bugs, hardly any food, and the bombs were falling all around. We could hear the bombing because we were so close to Dresden, and Dresden, of course, was knocked out, and to Berlin, and we could hear the war happening outside. But we were aware that the two armies were coming together. The Russians were moving in from the east, and the Americans were coming up towards the Elbe. So it was an exciting time, at the same time a difficult time. And then one morning we woke up, and there were no guards. The Germans just disappeared.
they fled.
They fled because they knew the Russians were there, and within a few hours, the Russians crashed into the camp.
What about heating in camps? I mean, how did you guys keep warm?
Well, it was cold.
No heat.
No, we didn't have heat. I can't remember heat at all. We would have big old blankets covered in blankets and lice, and I think itching kept you warm. When you lay in bed, you were itching so much. But there are lots of incidents. That part of the war was very horrible. So I can remember telling Kurt a bit about my experiences, and he was, but we never got around to this miserable part. And he was saying, gosh, that was a very privileged life because, our money was still going into the bank, our paychecks.
So when you guys were walking, being transported and or just logged, you were walking in the cold, in the snow, no heat, just walking. So walking kept you warm.
Walking. And then at night we slept. If we go to a hay barn in a farm, we could bury ourselves in the snow. Some of the guys went and slept with the cows. The cows kept them warm.
And that for 6 or 7 days.
Yeah.
What?
No, on the walk, that was it. And then in the camp, I can't remember. We might have had some burning thing, but it was primitive.
So
but of course, there are lots of things I could tell. That part of it is full of incident.
Sure.
Because I was once sent out on a foraging party to go and bring back food, and there were like 6 of us in a truck, and we were taken out with a Russian guy going in this van. And we drove into the countryside, and we arrived at a farm, and it was all slushy from the mud still, and you could see dead bodies lying, and you had to walk over dead German and Russian people. And then told to I thought when we set out that we were going to go and raid some German shop, and steal, but found that we had to.
I'm going to pause there because this interest of time.
It's a long one.
It's a long one, but it just gives the audience a flavour of what's on your website. The quality of what's there is quite remarkable. I want to again commend you.
Yeah, okay.
On compiling this, it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. But these are the people who were here, and so many years ago that they contributed.
Yes.
And they're no longer with us, but we see them as pioneer.
Yes, uh, and thank you. Keep repeating that word. They're pioneers that participated in the war. So those of our children's age, our grandchildren, and if you hear someone suggest that people of African heritage were not in the war, here is actual proof. We absolutely was in the war. Hundreds of thousands of men and women from the Caribbean and Africa participated in the war
Yeah.
and were a vital part of that war effort to defeat Nazi fascism.
Yes.
Really important lesson for our children, indeed many adults, to see for themselves, absorb into their consciousness, and be able to recite it to others with confidence. Okay,
Yes.
so it's really important, and that's why we do these shows, Arthur. That's why we do it. And this interview with you, I know, will stimulate others to make further inquiries. I would encourage the audience to go to Windrush Foundation.com.
That's it.
windrushfoundation.com. So I'll stop the sharing now. So let's go back to you, sir.
All right.
There you are. In your magnificence, if I may say so, in your magnificence. Now, I can see that we've had quite a number of messages on the messenger, but they are listening to you. They're captivated by you, it would appear, Arthur. I say that this normally happens when the quality of the information being shared, it's so riveting. They just want to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you, what is your passing words with us today? What are the key message you want the audience, both young and old, to understand and to act upon?
Yeah. Okay. Now it's important that we learn, we study. I think studying, learning, reading, especially read. Look at the news and be up to date and inform others. The whole thing about life is a life of learning. Never ever should we think that there's no more to learn. Learn especially about the heritage. That's why we formed Windrush Foundation. It's a heritage project. It's not a political project. It's heritage, and that means looking back and learning from the people whom we just showed. We showed you Cy Grant, and we showed you a lady who came as a young woman. She was adventurous. She served ATS. There are other people like her. I can remember there's a lady, Nadia Katous, still alive. In fact, she's going to be 99 this year.
Oh,
these are people who have been involved in making this country a better place to live, the community more so. So my encouragement will always be to get involved in the community, help others, in every way possible, get involved in social action.
yes.
There's one thing about social action that we need to remember. Every one of us can become an activist. An activist isn't anybody who was plucked out from the air and came down on earth. Anybody can be an activist, and an activist doesn't have to be outrightly the person who is stopping cricket or stopping whatever going on or the races. It is to do things to bring about change in the best way that you can. Everybody can bring about change. If everybody on this earth was to seek to bring about change, the world would be a better place.
Oh, word song. The leader of galaxytheory.net, that's Nana Pakambabai, would have said exactly what you just said. Outstanding.
Yes.
I'm going to be naughty. I'm going to ask one last question.
Okay.
Those of you who are members of the Labour Party would understand why I'm going to ask this question of Arthur Torrington. If Labour wins the next election, what would you like to see the Labour Party do, the Labour government do, in relation to the Windrush, I'm going to say, atrocity, disgrace that is before Britain first?
Yeah, well, I would say to help, but to speed up the compensation, I would say. Also to take better control of the monies that it's devoted to Windrush Day. At the moment, the Tory party is using that money for its own purpose. It's giving funding to things that are unnecessary activities, and I would hope that the Labour Party would change that system of how the Tory party runs the compensation scheme and how the funding for Windrush Day is given out. So those are the two things that I would focus on, so that Windrush would become more respectable.
Yes.
Windrush would not be seen to be a joke or a fun or a festival. Windrush is a serious project. Windrush is no different from the Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation.
Yes, indeed.
Doreen Lawrence is a very serious person. She talks about her son, and she's serious about her son. She doesn't. You don't hear her having street parties for Stephen Lawrence. You don't hear the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust having street parties for Holocaust remembrance. So Windrush is something to remember in a particular sober way.
Yes.
And it's not just to have a big party, a jump up and a carnival.
Thank you. So well said. So well said. And we hope, of course, the future Labour government would, of course, ensure that those who are not have their stay regulated feel able to approach the Home Office with confidence, change the culture inside the Home Office. And I know that the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, would echo those words, being a legal person himself.
That's right.
Nevertheless, Arthur Torrington, our esteemed elder and loaded one, thank you for being an excellent presenter today. And we look forward to your work. Our doors are always open to you.
Yes.
If you wish us to promote any of your events, we'll be more than happy to promote your events, because those events will, of course, it's not for you personally, it's intended for us all.
Can I just also tell the people in Southwark and elsewhere that on the Windrush Foundation website there's a free downloadable book. This book is called Mr. Windrush, Sam King. And this particular book will tell you all about Sam King's work in Southwark and elsewhere, and how the Windrush Foundation was set up, as well as what's happening now with Windrush. So this is the book. It's a free downloadable book. It's 80 pages in length in terms of the book itself, and it's all about how Windrush started through Sam King, Mr. Windrush.
Brilliant. What I would do, I'll take note of the link and I'll circulate it amongst the those who I send media to, so it will be linked directly. I've got the book, The Harder Side of the Mountain. I think it's called.
It's called Climbing Up the Rough Side of the Mountain.
There you go.
That's Sam King's book.
Excellent book. An excellent book. Truly moving. Yeah, truly moving. Arthur, thank you so much. Please have a good day.
Yes.
And stay strong and healthy and as wise as ever.
Thank you. And thanks for the pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hooray to Arthur Torrington. Hooray to Arthur Torrington. Go on. Arthur. There you go. Wow. Now, wasn't that something, huh? Yeah. Wasn't that something? It just goes to show what is possible when you're focused and you're determined. He's just an ordinary man, but involved in extraordinary activities. And we all can do the same. We all can do the same. I want to extend my regards to him. And he's invoked quite a few members. I would encourage you all to go to windrushfoundation.com. It's an important resource for you to access. And those of you who are teachers, again, they've got on the website information for teachers for the various key stages. It's there. It's the resource on the website. And if you can make contributions, he was too modest to say so. There are sections on the website where you can make donation to the Windrush Foundation to enable it to continue its important work. I think that was history in the making, if I may ask you. That was history in the making. And you heard those wonderful voices from the past, more recent past, I might add. And this is what we do here on The Motivator Show. It's intended to both inform, to encourage, to stimulate action. And I say those words repeatedly. The Motivator Show, where we translate words into action, and success is ours for the taking. And I say it repeatedly, deliberately, so it becomes a part of your mindset. Okay? And therefore you act accordingly. It's most critical mindset for our children, for the adult to express and display confidence, yeah, a certainty, okay, for the adults to be consistent in the confidence and certainty, okay, and through that experience, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, incorporate that confidence as part of their personalities. And they're very different personalities, therefore, to those who feel downtrodden, yeah, suppressed, beaten, as it were. Mhm. We want them to be confident, assertive, forward-thinking, forthright personalities. Why I'm concerned that we ensure young men and women, of course, but young men are careful, yeah, careful. Don't have children until you are certain you're in a position, one, to love, you're capable of that. Two, that you have a good woman with you who you trust and you want to stay with for the rest of your life. And three, you're in a good economic circumstance to have those children so that you can give them the very best that you could offer from your life. So Windrush is about the next generation. Yeah, the pioneers paved the way. So I could make that statement to you, and you can act out the statement. You can follow through, ensure it happens. It is mission critical that we pull together. It is mission critical that we pull together. Okay, I did want to run this video with you because let me go back to the beginning of this video very quickly. So we've had Arthor Torrington and, of course, Sam King, or the founders of the Windrush Foundation, established in 1995. An important occasion for us to keep in mind. Okay, and we must never forget. In fact, we will never forget. And of course, the pioneers came from the Caribbean. Yeah, for many of those countries were part of the British Empire or Commonwealth, so called. Pioneers came from West Africa, okay, including Nigeria and Ghana. I know their point at which they became independent changed matters for them. Nevertheless, it's still true. We enjoyed Windrush Day 2023. Yeah, very recently, of course. Yeah. Then we went on to the British Nationality Act, and Arthur was at pains to remind us that we were British before the British Nationality Act, but it ensured here on the statutes, if you're born in the colonies, you were British. Okay, you were British, are British. Okay. And of course, the pioneers came to Britain when they had over 1 million vacancies that could not be filled. So they called upon the fine young men and women from the Caribbean and Africa to come to Britain to take those jobs that were not being filled. I just want to pause at this quote for the moment, if I may. A quote by a former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley. And he says this: democracy means far more than the right to vote. For every 5 years, it means the right to participate in every aspect of national and community life. The people must believe that they can take part. Okay? In my own communities, okay? This is always an issue. But you've got to believe you can take part, and therefore you have the power to effect change. Okay? Yeah. I'm the result of that affirmative action in the minds of African peoples from the Caribbean and from Africa. I am the result of it. Okay? And the further part of this slide is If we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of many ancestors. A true African proverb. Uh-huh. If we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of many African ancestors. And they're there in stone for us to remind ourselves of them. And the last part of this slide is true teaching is not the accumulation of knowledge, it is an awakening of consciousness. I'm going to say it again very quickly. True teaching is not the accumulation of knowledge, it is an awakening of consciousness. Yeah? The confidence, awareness of who you really are and what you can and will be. Consciousness, confidence. Yeah? That's why we do these shows. That's why we do these shows. We just push it on. Important words, and I hope you inculcate that into your consciousness. It is not idle pronouncements on my part, okay? Not idle pronouncements, okay? So the 22nd of June is National Windrush Day, okay? And if you go to Waterloo Station, you'll see those statues, yeah? You see those statues. And long may you remember. And of course, this show goes out every Saturday between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Get that right? And if you are viewing us via Facebook and YouTube, please give us a like, make a comment, please. Just help the algorithms and share the links with your family, friends, associate. Please share the knowledge. Remember what Brother Nia said the other day when he came here from the National Black Supplementary School Association. It was bad news. It goes around the community like wildfire. Good news, we're reluctant to share it. This is good news, but let it circulate throughout the community like wildfire. Okay? This is how change happens. This is how change happens. Okay? This is how change happens because you are the change makers. Okay, that's what you remember. Professor Kevin Fenton, when he was here, when we discussed these matters, he reminded us that we are the change makers. Yeah, we are the change makers. Every word, every action is about enabling us to make a difference, both in your personal life, your family life, your community's life. We've got to pull together, work together, common aim, common purpose. Let that be so. For our sake, our children's, and our children's sake. Let it be part of our tradition. Mutual collaboration, mutual interest, mutual collaboration. Let's do so. Let it happen. Let it be not idle words. Okay? Let's translate these words into action because success is ours for the taking. Whew. What a show. What a show. I'm just grateful that you listened, okay? Because you listens, okay? As absorbed, okay? You listens as absorbed. I say unto you, until the next strong, I am the motivator, where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Until the next strong, I remain your service.